So this afternoon, we continue with clause. In our previous slide, we discussed clause as a meaningful group of words, which is a unit of grammar. And we explained what a main clause is and what a subordinate clause is. But we are looking at types of clause according to functions. And generally, all the clauses in this section belong to subordinate clause. We mentioned there are three basic subordinate clauses. We have noun clause, adjectival clause, adverbial clause. But in reality, there are 5 types. And we'll look at each of them briefly for you to understand how they are and what they are used to do. So subordinate clause cannot stand in the sentence. It has to depend on the main clause. But let's go into the type. The first one is a noun clause. A noun clause performs the function that a noun is meant to perform. And we mentioned that noun clause is introduced by some word, such as that, who, whoever, what, why, how. I will give some examples in our previous class. For example, we discovered that you are being the cause of our problem. This expression begins with the pointer word, the signpost, that's, and which is actually what was discovered. What we can offer is our request, introduced by what. And in that place, that clause functions as the subject of the sentence. Next one, I want to know how you manage the situation. What do you want to know? How you manage the situation function as the object of the sentence. Here we have, I don't have interest in whatever you have to say. Introduced by whatever, one of the elements. Then in is a preposition. This noun phrase function as the object of preposition. We need to note that a noun phrase performs the functions that a noun is supposed to perform. First, subject of the verb, as we see there, direct subject, subject complements, complement of preposition, and also in apposition. So we look at each of these functions briefly. Here we have the underlying expressions are noun clause. They are all noun clause, and those noun clause perform some function. Here we have the role you played in the program rescued our team. You know, to get the subject, you place a question tagging word before the verb. What rescued our team? Then we have the role you played in the program. So the role you played in the program here is a noun phrase. It's a noun clause, sorry. And also, it is the subject of the verb rescued. We say the subject of the verb rescued. And otherwise, we decided that it should be promoted. That it should be promoted is a noun or nominal clause. And that nominal clause functions as the direct object of the verb decided. Or if I say, what did we decide? That it should be promoted. So that noun clause function as direct object. Here, my concern is how you will survive. You realize that how you will survive is talking about my concern. Both of them relate to the same entity. So, therefore, my concern is a complement. It is needed to complete the expression. And complement to what? How you will survive is a complement. It is required to complete the expression. And is complement to the subject, my concern. So we can say that how you will survive is subject complement. The next example, there is wisdom in what the old man said. What the old man said is a noun clause, functioning as the object of preposition in. It's a complement to the preposition in. So what the old man said is a noun clause that functions as a complement to the preposition in. And your last example here, your suggestion that we should review the plan has been considered. If you look here, that we should review the plan refers directly to your suggestion. Here, that we should review the plan is a nominal clause. It stands in opposition to the subject, your suggestion. And you realize that it is separated by a pair of comma before it and comma after it. So it stands in opposition to the subject, your suggestion. Now, let's look at adjectival clause. Adjectival clause perform the functions of an adjective by modifying or qualifying a noun or a pronoun. So it modifies or qualifies a noun or a pronoun. It's also called a relative clause. Then why should it have two names? We call it adjectival clause. We call it relative clause. Why? It is called relative clause because it is introduced by relative pronouns. It is introduced by relative pronouns, such as that, who, whom, whose, which, and relative adverbs, such as when and where. But despite that, it must come before the word it modified. And we also state that this adjectival clause or relative clause can be introduced by zero relative pronoun. That is, there will be no relative pronoun before it. But we know that it modifies a particular noun or pronoun. Another thing you need to note is that it is always close to the word it modifies. It's always close to the word it modifies. Look at the food that is on the table belongs to Felicia. The underlying expression here that is on the table is a relative or adjectival clause. We have seen it. And it modifies the noun food. What is on the table? The answer will be food. It modifies the noun food. So we have the relative or adjectival clause modifies the noun food. Another example, the phone which rang has been seized. Which rang is a relative clause or adjectival clause. Which modifies the noun phone. Modify the noun phone in that expression. Another example we have here, the minister who siphoned our money has been arrested by the EFCC. Looking at it, who siphoned our money is relative or adjectival clause. And that clause has its subject as who, what, siphoned. Then you realize that as a relative clause, it modifies the noun minister. It modifies the noun minister. So let's look here. I don't know the place where you live. I don't know the place where you live. Where you live here is also a relative clause, which modifies the noun place. Because where you live is actually talking about place. It modifies the noun place. But the last example we have here, realize that there is an indicator that there is zero relative pronoun. We have, I was happy the moment I heard your voice. I heard your voice modifies moment. It modifies the noun. Moment I heard your voice. So I moment. That's why we said that it must be close to the word it modifies. So the adjectival clause is classified into two. We have restrictive or defining adjectival clause and non-restrictive or non-defining. restrictive or defining, non-restrictive, not. What do you mean by that? Restrictive adjectival clause supplies information needed to identify or clarify the antecedent because it adds to the meaning of the antecedent. The word it modifies, it adds to its meaning. So restrictive or defining makes a contribution to what has been said before. To the meaning of the word, it modifies. For example, the house that is painted yellow is a cinema. The house that is painted yellow is a cinema. We could have had the house is a cinema, but which house that is painted yellow? You realize that this clause supplies a piece of information which is used to identify the house in question that is painted yellow. Second one, I saw the student who won the prize. Could I just mention I saw the student, but there will be a question. Which student? Who won the prize supplies a piece of information that will help us to identify the student in question. So, but the non-restrictive or non-defined adjectival clause contains information that is not necessarily needed. You don't need the information. It has nothing to add to the meaning. It just plays there. And how you identify it is that it is marked by a pair of commas. There will be a comma before it and a comma after it. And looking at its nature, you will realize that you don't actually need it. For example, the biggest stapler, which uses the largest pins, has been stolen. The biggest stapler, which uses the largest pins, has been stolen. My question here is that what kind of pins do we expect the biggest stapler to use? Should it be the smallest pin or what? Normally, we know that the biggest stapler should use the largest pins. So this clause is not needed. Does not add any useful information to the sentence. The second, the best student who scored the highest mark in the exam was honored by the school. So how do we know someone is a best student? The person becomes the best student because he scored the highest mark in the exam. In all the exam, he has the highest score. So who scored the highest mark in the exam is not necessarily needed because it adds nothing to the sentence. Do we have any question before we proceed? If you have any question, you can indicate by raising of hand. You just raise your hand so that we can take it. Yes. Musa.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good
Please, I just
afternoon.
wanted to confirm this non-restrictive adjective in academic writing, is it acceptable? If no, is it acceptable in creative writing, sir? Thank you.
I don't think it's needed. One thing about grammar is that in grammar, we explain every item that fall in the structure of sentence and in the write-up, but it has nothing to contribute. So it's better we avoid it. So that's that. Then
In all forms of writing.
It's better you avoid it. It's not needed. You don't need it. Okay. Yes. Adeniyi Rodiat.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. For the function of noun clause, is subject of the verb also the same thing as subject of the sentence?
Yes, the same thing. We answered the same question last week. The confusion is that when we have, I mentioned that when we have a compound sentence, You know, the compound sentence has two main clauses. So in that place, we may be confused. Sentence, I mean, subject of which of the sentence? That's what some people agree that let's call it subject of the verb. But in normal other sentences, a sentence must have its subject and its predicate. So there's no problem about the two. Both of them refer to the same thing. The only issue is with the complex sentence and the compound sentence. So that's that. So if there's no question, let's continue the class. So next one is adverbial clause. Adverbial clause is a clause that performs the function of an adverb. It's a clause that performs any function that an adverb can perform. We mentioned the word adverbial. Adverbial means that a particular word, group of words, that can function as an adverb, which may not necessarily be an adverb, but can perform the function that an adverb is supposed to perform. We say that an adverbial clause modifies a verb by specifying degree, place, time, manner, condition, concession, reason, and so on of the verb. It specifies those qualities of the verb. You can say that it also modifies an adjective or another adverb. Generally, that's adverb for you. So adverbial clauses are introduced by subordinating conjunctions. These elements are called subordinating conjunctions. They are used to introduce adverbial clause. We have since, if, before, until, although, though, till, as, because, unless, while, and the rest of them. There's still many more. So in this example, while they were resting, the enemy attacked. If you look at the element that introduced that clause is while, one of the elements mentioned as subordinating conjunction. So realize that we have it while they were resting modifies the verb attacked. Attack was done at the time they were resting. You can say that this adverbial clause functions as adverb of time. It functions as modified the verb attacked. He paid homage to the king because he was a native of the land. He paid homage to the king because he was a native of the land. Here we realize that because started the adverbial clause and it modifies the verb page. It modifies the verb page. Her husband rejoiced when she gave birth to a baby. Her husband rejoiced when she gave birth to a baby. You look at it. When she gave birth to a baby, it functions as adverb of time, which modifies the verb rejoice by stating the time that the action of rejoicing took place. So in all the sentences above, you realize that adverbial clauses give additional information on the verbs of the sentence so that we understand the information or the message better. And we have different kinds of adverbial clause. We have different kinds of adverbial clause. The first one is adverbial clause of time. Adverbial clause of time tells the time that an event took place. It tells the time of an event. So it was introduced by when, until, before, after, and the rest. Look at this example. They went to their duty post when the meeting was over. They went to their duty post when the meeting was over. Realize that when the meeting was over indicates time. Another one, he did not leave the factory until the job was completed. Until the job was completed indicates the period also. Next one is adverbial clause of place. This indicates location of something, introduced by where and wherever. Example, this is the company where I did my industrial attachments. Where I did my industrial attachments is indicating a place. It indicates a place, a location. Next one, wherever is hiding, I will find out. Wherever is hiding, here is also adverbial clause indicating place. So we have adverbial clause of manner. Adverbial clause of manner indicates manner in which something, that is how something is done. It states how it's done. Introduced by as if, as though, and the rest. For example, he spoke as if he were the chairman. He spoke as if he were the chairman, meaning that he was not actually the chairman. That's just the manner of the speech. She treated him as she would treat her own son. As she would treat her own son modifies the verb treated, showing the manner of treatment. Then we have adverbial clause of reason. Adverbial clause of reason. This clause expresses reason for an action by stating why something was done, and introduced by since, because, as, and the rest. Example here, since you have repented, I will forgive you. Why should the action of forgive take place? Adverbial clause of reason state that because there was repentance. Since you have repented, I will forgive you. She will not accept him because he was not serious. What's the reason for not accepting? Because he was not serious modifies the verb would not accept. It modifies the verb would not accept. So that one states reason. So we have adverbial clause of condition. Adverbial clause of condition. This clause shows the condition under which something was done. And it's introduced by if, unless, provided that. So look at this example. If you had worked hard, you would not have lost your job. So there was loss of job because someone did not work hard. That's the condition in which the losing of job was done. Because if it has not, if the person had not done that, the job would not have been lost. So if the person being referred to had actually worked hard, wouldn't have lost the job. The next one, we have adverbial clause of concession. Adverbial clause of concession. This clause concedes the statement made in another clause by showing a fact that seems opposite to the idea in the clause. When you have the adverbial clause of concession, it shows that what you have said, we can have the opposite, what is not expected. And we have some word like though, although, even though that introduce it. Example, we are not friends, I will defend him. My question is, when you are not friend, why will you defend someone who is not your friend? That or although shows concession. In that place, we realize that it's stating that however she seduces me is something that when you are being seduced, normal thing is to create a space, but I will not give the chance. So next one, adverbial clause of purpose. This clause shows the purpose for which something was done. Why did you do it? And introduced by that, so that, in order that. Look at this example. I sold my land so that it could go to school, like some of our parents did, and some of your parents are actually doing. I sold my land so that it could go to school. What was the purpose of selling the land? So that the son could go to school. Now, he came in order that he could meet you. Why did he come? In order that he could meet you. So for the meeting to take place. The next one is adverbial clause of results. Adverbial clause of results. This clause shows the result or consequence of an action. And introduced by so that, such that. Example, she worked so hard that she became extremely successful. She worked so hard that she became extremely successful. So hard that she became extremely successful modifies the verb worked and show the result of that work. He was beaten by his opponent such that he could not walk again. You see the result of beating led to not being able to move. So next one, adverb preference. This adverb shows that the option preferred by someone, there is an option preferred by someone, introduced by rather than, instead of, and the rest. We have rather than wasting my time here, I prefer to go home and sleep. Rather than wasting my time here, I prefer to go home and sleep. We say what someone prefer to instead of other. Instead of begging people for help, I will work hard. Instead of begging people for help, I will work hard. So it shows preference. So that's that about adverbial clause. And next one is non-finite clause. Non-finite clause. Non-finite clause is a clause with non-finite verb. We call it finite clause because it has a non-finite verb in it. And that's a major verb that occurs in it. So non-finite verbs are the verbs that do not undergo any grammatical change as a result of changes in number, person, and tense. Change the tense, change the number, they remain the same. And therefore, non-finite clauses do not change according to changes in number, person, and tense. They don't change, they've said that. They are also called reduced clauses. They are called reduced clauses because they do not have subjects in some cases. They do not have subject. But that does not mean that you cannot recover the subjects. That's why you don't have it does not mean you cannot recover it. You can actually recover a subject, which is not virtually present there. And these are the types of non-finite clause. We have to infinitive. To infinitive. I will like to live here immediately. I would like to live here immediately. So live here immediately is a non-finite clause. It is a non-finite clause to infinitive. She cannot wait to see her husband beaten. She cannot wait to see her husband beaten. To see her husband beaten is a non-finite clause. You realize that there is no subject in them, which is the nature of non-finite clause. He wanted to help you out of the mess. He wanted to help you out of the mess. To help you out is another example there. Apart from to infinity, we have ed participle. Please mute your mic. We have ed participle. Example, clothed in scarlet, the lady mounted the podium. Clothed in scarlet, the lady mounted the podium. Clothed in scarlet as ed participle is a non-finite clause. And the man fired by the MD is very rude. Fired by the MD is a non-finite clause with ed participle. The people recruited last week are in training. Recruited last week is another example of ed participle of non-finite clause. The third one, ing participle. Having done the job, the man left. Having done the job, the man left. Realize that we have having done the job, which is ing participle of non-finite clause. Searching the room carefully, he found the document in the last drawer. Searching the room carefully, he found the document in the last drawer. Realize here that this is a non-finite clause, but ing participle. Working hard always, he easily became successful. The same thing with the previous one. So they are all ing participle clause. They are non-finite clause. And let's look at the functions of non-finite clause. A non-finite clause can modify a noun. So can function as a modifier of a noun. For example, the man to consult for the job is an expert. The man to consult for the job is an expert. We have here to consult for the job modifies the noun man. It functions as a post modifier. The girl to honor in the class has the best results. The girl to honor in the class has the best results. To honor in the class is also a non-finite clause that modifies the noun girl. Second one's modifier of an adjective. Example, she's anxious to travel. She's anxious to travel abroad. To travel abroad is non-finite clause, modifies the adjective anxious. They are wise to quit the sport. They are wise to quit the sport. To quit the sport is non-finite clause, which modifies the adjective wise. It is dangerous walking barefooted. So walking barefooted is a non-finite clause, which modifies the adjective dangerous. So next one is adverbial function. Non-finite clause can function and perform adverbial function. Example, panting like a deer, he lay on the floor. In this place, it gives us the reason for laying, modifies the verb lay. Singing aloud in the class, she would drew everyone's gaze. What drew everyone's gaze? Singing aloud in the class modifies the verb drew. Sighting the fire, she screamed. Why did she scream? She sighted the fire. So sighting the fire modifies the verb screamed. It can also function as subjects in the sentence. Example, fighting everybody is not the solution to your problem. Fighting everybody is not the solution to your problem. You look at it here, fighting everybody is a non-finite clause, ing participle. It functions as the subject of the verb is. Drinking alcohol always cannot overcome frustration. Drinking alcohol always cannot overcome frustration. So in this place, what cannot overcome frustration is the subject of the sentence, which is drinking alcohol always. And another example, to run faster than your creator is a step to destruction. To run faster than your creator is a step to destruction, which is the subject of the verb is. So we can also have non-finite clause as subject complements. It complements the subject. Wives are to support their husband. To support their husband, modify the subject wife. The solution to your problem is to stop telling lies. To stop telling lies modifies the subject, the solution to your problem. Modifies. The purpose of our gathering is to provide a lasting solution to the problem. The purpose of our gathering is to provide a lasting solution to the problem. To provide a lasting solution to the problem is a non-finite clause which function as complement to the purpose of our gathering. So the last one is verbless clause. It's also a minor clause, verbless clause. It's just like non-finite clause. A verbless clause is a subordinate clause and it has no subject. Also, does not have a verb at all, meaning that that clause does not have a subject and a verb, but occurs within the main clause. It occurs within the main clause. And if you are trying to recover the verb that should be there, the verb must be a form of be verb. If you remember the be verb, there are 8 variants of be verb. We have is, was, are, were, be, been, and the rest. There are 8 of them. So any verb that will occupy the verb position in verbless clause must be a form of be verb. And verbless clause may have a subject, like we said, but it may not have a subject. If it does not have a subject, the subject is derived from the main clause, meaning that the subject of the main clause is supposed to be the subject of the verbless clause. Note that. The subject of the main clause is supposed to be the subject of the verbless clause. Example, though troubled and worried, they continued their job. If you look at it, though troubled and worried, there is no subject here, no verb. When out of money, she ran to her brother. When out of money, she ran to her brother. Looking at it, when out of money does not have a subject, no verb. And is non-finite, it's a verbless clause. I saw a tree while on the mountain. I saw a tree while on the mountain. So while on the mountain is a verbless clause. They are on the line. But this verbless clause, there is something about them. You can recover the verb and the subject, like you mentioned earlier. So it's a reduced clause, like I mentioned, but those reduced clause can be developed into full clause. Example, though they were troubled and worried, they continued their job. You will realize that what functions as the subject of the verbless clause is actually the subject of the main clause, like I said earlier. And the verb is a form of be verb, which is were. The second example, when she was out of money, she ran to her brother. She, the subject here, is also the subject of the main clause. Was is a form of be verb. I saw a tree while I was on the mountain. I, the subject, is also the subject of the main clause. The was is a form of be verb. So you realize that verbless clause can recover the verb and the subject in it. So let's stop here.